Hello and welcome to LOP Radio Aftershock for the horror show at Extreme Rules. I'm sat really weirdly, I don't like it. The picture's bigger. So it's done like that, it looks really strange. Anyway, welcome, no, you care about that. Welcome to Laws of Pain Radio Extreme Rules Aftershock. Who knows? I put a tweet out after the show ended and I was just like, well, I've got no idea what I'm going to say. That was a weird one. Good news is that I have got a whole string of... I'm just going to check my sounds coming up before I start. Yeah, my mic's all fine, I think. Hopefully. Anyway, so I'll start with the swamp. I'm going to get into it quickly. Actually, introduce yourself first. My name is Matt Maher, aka Imp, and you can follow me on Twitter at the damn Impoclat. And I write columns and things for Laws of Pain, and I've been doing these aftershocks or post-show reviews now for just a couple of weeks. So here's Extreme Rules. What do I don't even know what. It's not one of those where it was like so horrific. What do I say? It's more genuinely. I don't have words to I don't really have words to talk about my opinion on it, because my opinion is pretty kind of just flat. Like there was not much to it. Like it was things that happened. When we get to I'll do the order slightly differently. I'll talk about the main event and then work my way down the card to the beginning of the show, because this is getting wondering about the order. But it was a really weird show. When I say weird, as in it was so bizarre in terms of the build-up, in terms of what we're delivering. But when it happened, like turns out like WWE bizarre is just like it's not bizarre in a super interesting way. It's bizarre in a kind of flat way. It's just kind of like, it was a bit crap, yeah. That's how I explained a lot of the show. There was some generally good stuff in it. And like, overall, there were some parts I really, really enjoyed. Like Sasha Banks and Bayley, they're my favourite acts in WWE right now. But Sasha Banks' match against Asuka in particular, like that was just... I was really enjoying that match until the finish happened. But whilst compared to how it ended, the swamp fight, I've seen a general consensus kind of on Twitter as well that I think we're in the same position. I thought it was fine, but I didn't really get much from it. Now, I really enjoyed the Firefly Funhouse, and I remember at the time I brought up David Lynch as a... I'm trying to go back to... It's been a while since I watched the Firefly Funhouse, but if I remember rightly, the point I was making was David Lynch is like a master of making it go, isn't there mystery behind those eyes? Look at those eyes, isn't there mystery behind those eyes? For you know, there's absolutely nothing behind them. There's nothing to it, but he makes you believe there might be something there, regardless of if there is or not. And the swamp fight, and it feels ridiculous to be comparing these two worlds, but the swamp fight didn't even ask the question, really. It more put forward that they might be a question, and even at times like, is there meant to be a deeper thing here? But nothing was ever asked, really. Things happened, and we had Bray telling you that he's going to try and to destroy Braun's going to have to kill the monster he's become, and I guess that's the deepest it went. Braun Strowman having to fight against his past in a way, and Bray Wyatt trying to break down this monster creature he's become. This is not meant to be him. This is not meant to be his path. He's not to be at this point. Success he's earned. He's not meant to be here. That's the peak of it. That feels like TV build-up kind of levels of stuff compared to what we used to with Bray Wyatt. We get the TV levels of build. Maybe it gets more and more intriguing as it gets closer to the pay-per-view. Then the pay-per-view hits and you get something kind of out there and strange. Was that, but there wasn't much to it. It's the first time I've watched a Bray Wyatt thing on a pay-per-view, specifically on a pay-per-view, and I've just kind of felt like there wasn't much to it. Like the Firefly Funhouse, the point I was trying to make with the David Lynch comparison, as ridiculous a comparison is, the point I'm trying to make is it at least posed the question and made you did that question thing where it's like asking, isn't there some mystery behind this? Isn't there some intrigue behind it? At least it asked that question. Which, even if the answer is no, not really, but at least it asked the question. Here there was no such thing. There was no intrigue. There was no thing to kind of lead me into it. I just kind of watched it and things happened. I have got a run through of what happened as well. I'm going to go through that in a second. I just want to say I was meant to be plugging, and also painandwrestlingheadlines.com. If you want to go there for your latest wrestling news. We've got all the results lined up on the site as well in like a massive post as usual. Tito's got a column up like ASAP as well, like old school Tito managed to bash out a review for this one. Assuming what helps is the early finish time. For me in particular, that's something that really, really helps. It's really nice that I'll be live regardless when the show finishes. So when it finishes at 2:30, oh, moi, I've had like, I'd say like 25 minutes I've had to get everything like nice and ready and set up and things, and that's great for a British person to have that amount of time and freedom to do that. I'm looking to the side. I've only just realised I didn't check if I turned my charger off my laptop, because I'm doing that from this. Lockdown rules are still in effect. So I'm in lockdown scenario. Anyway, let's go through the run through for this match, whatever it was that's happened, or I don't really know. As I go through it, if anybody live is sending in details or whatever, so where I've got my notes on my laptop, I can't see how many live or anything. So I guess that's I find that a massive benefit. I can just rattle on if anything pops up in my peripheral vision, and then I can address it. If not, power through. Again, I'm learning how to do this. Still only a couple of weeks of the video live stream with me and my 3 a.m. hair, which it's not awful. It's been worse. Anyway, I'm bloody tangenting on. So the main event was the swamp fight between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt, if you could call it that, whatever it was. So we kicked that off with Braun arriving in his truck with his muscles and his army cap, to Wyatt patiently waiting in his rocking chair. The lights go out outside. Weird thing number one. And the man's gone. Let the adventure begin. There's a sign on there. It's like you enter here. Oh, I can't speak. Ye who enter here, abandon all hope. And of course, Braun Strowman throws the rocking chair at it, like in pure anger. But less dweeby than me. So what does this Wyatt game contain? Masked goons from the woods. Braun fights them off before getting hit from behind by a spade-wielding black sheep masked Braun. You must defeat your past self, my friend. Or something. It's wrestling. Just make hand movements and go, mind games. It's just Bray Wyatt mind games. It's wrestling. You do something that maybe doesn't make sense and just go, ooh, mind games. Yeah, it works sometimes. The big man awakens chained to the rocking chair in a cabin as Wyatt makes his way with Ye Olde Lantern. Wyatt calls Strowman's success temporary. He can't see where he belongs. He goes on a full classic Wyatt preach. Like, he knows where he's supposed to be. Like, he's there to help Braun. He's got to destroy the monster he has become. And then he ends it with, you want to see something really scary? It's a snake! Ah, not a snake. Snake. And then we move on to the next thing. It's like, I don't know if this was calling back to something I have absolutely no knowledge on. But they did the spooky snake and that woke him up. So, again, it's one of these where if there was symbolism in this, I didn't catch on to it. I didn't latch on. It just took me straight. I saw myself miming a snake and it looked really weird. But yeah, so then we go back to Braun Strowman awoking again in a back into the field kind of area, but there's a fire there now and he fights off the goons. One of those goons is not wearing a mask. That goon gets set on fire and just kind of runs around with and then runs away. Then the Wyatt mind games with Strowman continue as he sees Alexa Bliss kind of dressed a bit like Sister Abigail in that way and to say, you want to be with me, Braun, with flashbacks of the Mixed Match Challenge. It's like, yeah, mix in the past world of Braun Strowman, including everything as much as we can. That's, again, I think way back when I was writing weekly columns based on all the US wrestling shows, all 4 of them. When I was doing that, I was kind of calling Bray Wyatt like the Humpty Dumpty of the WWE, who's fixing all of the damage done over the past couple of years into the continuity plasterer, linking everything back together, no matter how much it was just quickly dropped or didn't really work or make sense. It's no, Bray Wyatt makes the nonsense make sense and fit into the world. He did it with the karaoke thing earlier. It's wasn't that stupid? With a little nod to it in the show earlier. But here it was the nod to the Alexa Bliss and Braun Strowman working together in the Mixed Match Challenge. The Humpty Dumpty continuity demon once again comes back and patches WWE back together again. I went through the metaphor, sure. So it was there was a nice little mix of like a mixed match challenge callback with like the fan theory, Sister Abigail, Spooky Spook, kind of all put together. Wyatt attacks out of the smoke though. Braun catches him and chokeslams him onto a wooden boat that happened to be there. And Wyatt is then sent away by Braun. But the boat returns and it's empty. Oh, where's Wyatt? He's in the water. Braun, and then they have a brawl in the water. Braun only just fights him off, climbing onto the wooden pier, only for Wyatt to be there again. They brawl onto shore to like a open hut area. And Wyatt attacks him with an axe handle. No, a literal axe handle. Not your hands high together, you nerd. And then he says to Braun, "Look what you made me do, Braun." Braun laughs. Wyatt laughs at the big lad, but ends up getting booted off into the water. Braun looks on and says, "It's over." We get the corner logo, but it doesn't fade to black. Instead, sticking on the man looking into the swamp. And again, I didn't buy it. And then when I looked on Twitter, like I just saw quite a few people posting, it's like, has the end of the show marker at the end just lost its sting now? It's just been done too many times, has it? But Wyatt's hand comes out of the water and drags Strowman in. The two are under, and we get shots of red water. The Fiend visors. We go off air with the Fiend's laughter ringing to a slow zoom onto the Fiend's face. And that's how we end the show. That is it. And he's kind of left like, okay then. So is the intrigue that Strowman might come back as something else, as in he's the latest person to be reverted to something by Wyatt. And the intrigue here is, I'm trying to think of what they were trying to go for, because normally there's like a, well, that was weird, what happens next kind of thing. But with Strowman, I'm not getting that. It's like he got dragged into the water, and I joked with in the LOPR Radio preview for Aftershock, which went up yesterday. I made a joke to Stephanie Chase about what if the water is like the water at the Hardy compound, like the naked reincarnation, and you've come back out as something else. That seems to happen. As soon as I saw the boat, I did in my head go, dilapidated boat. And I was just thinking, have they done that water thing again, essentially, and he's the demon in the water and in the swamp, and then Strowman transforms into something else when he's pulled into the swamp. I don't know. That's my thing with this. I'm not taking much away from it. Like with the WrestleMania one, I could go back and look, well, what they're trying to say with this bit, what they're trying to say with that bit. This one, it didn't really feel like there was any depth to it. Like, to be fair, with the one at WrestleMania, when you did dig into it, that's where, as I said, they asked the question, but there wasn't really much to the answer. Whilst here, they didn't even get to asking you the question. The intrigue was never really set up. You just saw things happen. They told you the motivation in a way for what they were planning to do. Then there was a brawl type thing. I didn't get much from it. That's, I guess, my thing as well. I just didn't get much. In terms of like a wrestling fan as well, wasn't much to pop you either. Again, in the preview, we were predicting, would there be moments to pop us? What references would they be? I was thinking there'll be references galore in this thing. I did say we'd get Black Sheep Strowman. That's the one thing I got right. But I wasn't expecting it to kind of just be a quick thing like it was. I mean, at that point, I still had relatively high hopes. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Another mind-tricky thing, like John Cena, where he can go back over Strowman's career. And they kind of did that. It just felt like in a much lesser interesting way. Which, I guess the way they did it fits the Bray Wyatt character, that version, where he was very ranty and rambly and would just go on and explain everything. But that means that the segment isn't that interesting. Like, the big bulk time portion was Wyatt's rant. That was the biggest segment in the entire thing, was Wyatt's preach, I guess rant's not the right word. It was his preach to Strowman. Yeah. Not that. It does mean to watch it wasn't that exciting. Wait, and then they had the big brawl in the swamp. I come to the pier. Kicks. I'm trying to think if I've missed anything, and if I have, it's because of writing notes, but I didn't get much out of it. And that's from somebody who loved the Funhouse, who's loved the Bray Wyatt character from as it's been, who's loved the kind of slight character tweak where he was now changing people. It's like, yeah, like I've thought it out before, saying that WWE are normally one of those who will do something and then they'll fix it later or correct the story arc or correct something. They're pretty good at editing in post. That's another way to put it. And I've been fine with the tweets of that for The Fiend, like the editing in post, as you could say. Like in a few episodes down the line, the things start to make sense, type of thing. Like there was a plan all along, compared to somewhere where you can tell there was a plan all along because the hints to it would be there earlier on. Which is I'm going on a tangent. Yeah, I just didn't get much from it. And then as soon as it ended, I was just thinking, well, I've got to go live soon, and I've got no words. I've got nothing to say. It just happened, and I guess that's in terms of a review, the worst kind of, I guess, review for a thing is if it's nothing, essentially. You got no emotion out of you. And so when it ended, it just ended, and again, I didn't have any emotion towards it. Which is the worst kind of feeling. So when I'm saying I didn't know what I was going to say when it came live, that's why I don't have much to say, because it didn't really give me much to... I don't know. I guess I'll move on. It's kind of disappointing. But yeah, I was expecting... It was definitely weird. It definitely had some callbacks, but it's one of those where I felt like there wasn't really much to it, and I didn't get much out of it. I guess the only kind of pop moment I got was the Alexa Bliss bit, because I thought that was everything. For me, that was the one kind of clever bit, where you need more than one. You need more than one kind of, and what's it building to? Which is building to a ball, gets booted in, then he gets pulled into the swamp. Story, I'm assuming story being that he is going to break down the monster Braun Strowman, and when we see him next on SmackDown, he'll be something else. Or will he be a follower of Bray Wyatt? I don't know. Is it at least created intrigue in that way, where you can use it to then set up something, but it is essentially setup, so to end a pay-per-view on setup is a little bit kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, WWE, quite often this kind of pay-per-view, like the last one before SummerSlam, in this area is kind of fine, and I guess Extreme Rules falls into that. Like weirdly, I had a very strong, I guess, like Cyber Sunday kind of feel, where there were, I don't know, it's kind of like things happening, but it never felt like this was a big deal of a show. So that's what I always got from Cyber Sunday. It was like, yeah, it was an event that happened, but it never felt like a big deal. Like it was a bit of fun, it was a bit wacky at times, a little bit different, which obviously I'm using very lightly when talking about Cyber Sunday. We hear those words take on quite a stronger meaning. So I think it's time to move on. Yes, I'm really sad I've not got more to say. Like, I'd like to go on for ages about this. I guess I kind of have. I spent ages talking about how I'm disappointed I don't have anything to talk about. I guess that is me having something to talk about. But yeah, anyway. Let's move through to the previous match as we go backwards through the card. Match number 6 of the night, Dolphy's Choice, which turned out to be Extreme Rules for Dolph Ziggler only. McIntyre can't get DQ'd or anything outside the rules of a standard WWE match. This was for the WWE Championship, and yes, between Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler. A pretty fun bout. Like, I was never invested, so this was like a little buffer between the women and the main event for me. Both of these are bloody great wrestlers with a decent, like, against the odds fight for the champion. Perfectly summed up at a point where McIntyre was on top and Ziggler kicked the lad right in the dick. Like, different rules for different wrestlers. Some of you will hate this. I thought, really it's classic heel's advantage. Like, a hero having to fight back against the odds that are so firmly in the baddie's favour. That's just kind of how I saw it as. And I guess if you're a stickler for, but the rules, then this pay-per-view, just ignore this pay-per-view. Don't watch this pay-per-view. If that's the thing. If for some reason you're watching me instead of the pay-per-view, and that's one of your things, yeah, it's not the show for you. That's what I'll get to with the match previous. But like Ziggler and McIntyre tried, but with the win never in doubt, I just wasn't able to get into it. Like, perhaps I was still recovering from the past 2 match endings compounded on top of each other. Like, Eye for an Eye and Banks vs. Asuka, like those 2 endings, which you'll understand. If you've not seen the show, you'll understand in a second when I get to them. But yeah, like, the match was fine. Like, it wasn't bad. It was fine. Like, I'm not saying it was awful. Like, Ziggler able to chop down the champion fast thanks to his unique rules, whilst McIntyre was having to do more and more to snatch back momentum. Like Mr. Ziggles quite literally elevated his offense too, like launching off the corner post onto a table prone McIntyre on the outside, leading to the Scot having to struggle back to the ring before the 10 count, while Ziggler could just sit there at ringside and wait for it to happen. Because it was also, as I've said when I was reading up the rules, that meant, in terms of the outside of the standard WWE rules, that meant that if McIntyre were to get counted out or disqualified, he would lose the championship. So, added tension, and it was all against the odds. Ziggler had all of the odds in his favour. Like, Ziggler increased... I think it was Rich Latter. Rich Latter on Twitter, to give him a shout out, and to hopefully not misquote somebody else. He worded it as Ziggler the first man to lose when he brought a gun to a knife fight. It's just that, the heel type of thing. As in, it's kind of, I'll call it cartoony, like wrestling thing. I don't mean that as a slight. As in, it's the heel has all the advantage. Oh, what's he like? Ugh, silly heel gets outdone by the heart of the hero. Like, over the match, Ziggler became increasingly frustrated at not being able to keep Drew down. No matter how many chairs, signature manoeuvres, what have you, the champion just wouldn't stay down. In the end, Ziggles counts down to hit the super kick just like Drew does his Claymore, but instead is clattered with the Claymore. 1, 2, 3, the champion retains. Yeah, it was decent. Like, I'm not going to remember it, but sure, yeah, it was decent. Like, more importantly, McIntyre retains, he rolls on to SummerSlam. Even if he's running out of opponents, he's been a great champion. And that's what this match kind of felt like to me. It's get him to SummerSlam, give him a decent match, give him a decent win. He's overcame all the odds, he's shown his heart, and then you move on. So, yeah. Like, personally, in terms of, like, if you're building the card up with investment level, this match I would have put I would have put the women's match on last. Even with the finish, just because I was so into it. But, McIntyre retaining against Ziggler was never in doubt. I struggled to get invested. Had some cool spots, some cool moments. The typical story of the hero having to come against a villain who's got all the odds in his favour. It was fine, yeah. There was nothing wrong with it, I just didn't care. It's just... Again, with the last two matches as well. And how Asuka Banks finished, which I'll get to in a second. But by the time the Swamp match ended, I didn't really care for Ziggler McIntyre, even though it was decent. And the Swamp match just didn't hold my interest or give me much to dig into or care about. So the show ended just a bit flat. I was like, oh, that's a shame. The build-up was... The show felt mental going in. Like, what are they going to do? This is going to be pure nonsense. I'm ready for nonsense. And I got nonsense, but not the kind I wanted. It's the best way to put it. Anyway, winding back once again. I've not got anything more to say on the championship match. It's a nice little build. Move on. The Raw Women's Championship, Asuka versus Sasha Banks. The match I was most looking forward to. Like, it was quite the swing from the previous match in Mysterio versus Rollins to this one. Like, both these characters are awesome. Both these wrestlers are awesome. This feud has just been awesome. Like, easily my favourite thing going in WWE right now. Like, this was my main event. Like, hell, like, it might well have done so outside of a pandemic world where these cinematic matches are not main eventing shows. Because, like, in all likelihood, they're not going to end a pay-per-view in real life with a cinematic match. Because we've seen before how the cinematic kind of thing works, where the crowd just get bored. It's kind of similar. But it was, like, the match itself, such an entertaining back and forth, neither really managing a full grasp of momentum, like, such an awesome pace to the match, like, clocking in as, like, one of the longer matches on the show. Like, the thing absolutely flew by for me, at least I think it was. Like, everything was so smooth, wrestling at such a pace, no wasted momentum, with the match constantly moving into that next gear. Like, so many counters, meaning neither had control. Both entirely focused on the competition, like no wasted motion, as I said, with both going straight for the pinfalls after knocking their opponent down. Like, the final third for me was where it kicked into incredibly awesome gear. Like, final third, mostly, for most of the final third. Like, for me, it was when the moment Banks landed on her feet after the top rope German suplex from the top, where she tweaked the knee. Meaning that when she tried to follow up with a dropkick off the second rope, she slipped on the knee, tweaking it further. And then there's a weak point now, and Asuka can target that weak point and then use that to maybe get into the Asuka lock or something. But with Asuka on top, running interference from Bayley, Kyrie failed to stop her, eating a Bayley belly. Let's just call it that. To the outside. And then you got the title distractions, just like we got on SmackDown or Raw or both. NXT, that's where we definitely saw it. All leading to the referee being accidentally hit with the mist by Asuka during a pandemic. Just to note that. Bayley then hits Asuka with another title, and Bayley pulls the referee's shirt off, puts it on, counts the pin, shouts at the poor timekeeper to ring the bell, grabs the titles. The two leave with all the belts as the commentators talk up the confusion. No, just send a second ref down to say, no, you're not a ref. Done. That's that done. I know it completely destroys what they're going for, but I guess if you get caught with a quick roll-up or something, I don't know. It's not a finish I would have wanted. I wouldn't have gone for this anyway, just have Asuka pin her. It's the way they want to continue the feud. And of course, like in Imp's wrestling world, if you do this match on pay-per-view, you put someone over. Whilst this ending continues the feud without putting anybody over. Like on Raw, they're very likely to sell that as, no, she's not champion. But why didn't a second ref? It makes no sense. It's one of the things where if you peel it back a little bit, it doesn't make any sense. But if you look at it kind of like straight on, or maybe on Raw, they'll explain that she's not champion. She's just taking the belts. But then just immediately to me begs the question of, well, why didn't you do anything on the night? Why wait till the night after? For me, it's plot point rather than it's an inaction for the plot convenience rather than this is how the world works. It once again goes against how the world works with how we've seen the world work before. You've got to forget how it works because now it doesn't for this particular occasion. Which I feel like a bit like a nerd when that happens, but yeah. Again, for me, the commentators were talking up the confusion where it's just like, no, there's multiple fixes for this. It's just to like, no, because they're not. That's not the rules. They're not the rules. Yeah. End of. Like, I was really enjoying the match as well. Like, I was enjoying the match so much, and the ending was so crap. It just again took me out of it. And from this point on, I was kind of taken out of the pay-per-view. Didn't really care into it. The match before did a job to kind of just take me out of stuff. So I'm to get back in focus for this match, which they managed to do because both Asuka and Sasha Banks are amazing. Kairi Sane and Bayley also amazing. Like everybody around, like in this match, I was so into it because I'm so into all of the characters, all of the wrestlers. Like I genuinely like really care about what was going on, and I think I said it before. Don't ever get my rule is I shouldn't get invested in WWE because their booking style is not for me. If I get invested in anything, I'll just get burned. And I guess this was another reminder. Even though I'm really enjoying Asuka and Sasha Banks with their feud, it's going to get WWE booked. And that's exactly what happened here. It's like, just put someone over. Or at least have it... You can have a match end in a way where you don't have to do this. I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of the super convoluted booking. And I guess if you're going for that Attitude Era style of confusion, lots of stuff happening, ending. So, I've said it before. I personally, I never watched during the Attitude Era, and for me, wrestling's moved on from then. And you can take some jokes from it, but taking directly still and trying to produce it like something from that era, where the fans have moved on. A lot of the fans have moved on. Like, you're not going to get me, somebody who didn't watch the Attitude Era, in with that style of booking, because I didn't watch at that point. It doesn't do anything for me. There's a whole lot of people they're not appealing to, which sucks because I was enjoying the match so much, and I had it down in my notes. Right, this is match of the night. I'm truly enjoying this. I'm enjoying it so much. But then it's kind of just the ending just kind of took it away from me. I guess the one match on the show that I enjoyed from start to finish that didn't have any nonsense, I guess. Like the first two matches, so because the first one had tables in it, I guess that one wins. Like the opening match was a fun opener, and I wouldn't put it as anything more than fun opener. But that's what it was. It was fun opener, and therefore you inject the energy, and that's what it did its job. And there's somehow, because of how the rest of the show went up, it's ended up as my match of the night when it should have been Sasha Asuka Banks. Sasha Asuka Banks. Proof it's 3:30 in the morning. So again, the match itself, up until the ending, was right up there for me. And it felt like the kind of ending where all the nonsense starts to happen, but the face stays in. The face keeps going. And if there are shenanigans where Bayley does that, no, she gets called out for it, and she gets kicked out, and then he continue with the match. Like, it felt like that beat, but they chose to end it on that beat. Where, mostly because I'm assuming they want to do the match again at SummerSlam. It has a detrimental effect, just like I talked about in the main event, where if it turns out to be setup, that means that the match that is the setup loses a lot of its momentum, a lot of its... Like, when you look back on it, it's kind of like, and it makes the show feel overall flat. It's like when I give my, like, show grade at the end, like, it fell flat. That's my sentence version. The show fell flat. And in my preview with I can't remember if Stephanie agreed or not, but in the preview I was just saying that this match for me was like, it cannot go badly wrong. I just remember she did agree. in my match prediction, I was like, they can't possibly do this badly. Just have them go out, wrestle, done. This match will be match of the night. And then my expectations going in, and I was ready for it. I was excited for it. And as the match was going on, I was really, really into it. And then, nope, they found a way. My stamp of this can't possibly go wrong, like, incorrectly used. Should have saved my ink. So, it's such a shame. I was enjoying the match so much. And then they did that at the end, and it's just like, I mean, I guess that's why you're doing it, but it's the booking again that I'm not a fan of. So, yeah. Oh well. Shenanigans happened, and for me, that was the perfect point to then kick into because I called it like the final third, you can kick into a final fourth of the match, like a sudden last 5 minutes, where the last 10 minutes were great, but these last 5 have really kicked in. It's like, for me, that's the holy point. And I feel like if, after all this shenanigans stuff, the match had continued or gone into another final 5 minutes afterwards, where it's just the two on one-on-one together. But then I also understand that's not what they want to do. They want to keep the match going, not give you a definitive winner. But it's on pay-per-view. That's what the difference is for me. Maybe I view pay-per-views differently. This ended up being a set-up pay-per-view. And I guess the good thing is it's only 2.5 hours long. So, hooray! Get your energy jinx out for SummerSlam. August 24th. Get ready. Those shows... I mean, they've done quite well with shortening the shows as it is. But I don't want 4 hours. No. Finishing at 2:30, that was lovely. Get to go to bed like way before my eyes get extremely blurry, where I can still read my notes. Anyway, it's time. Let's flipping do it. Eye for an eye. Seth Rollins versus Rey Mysterio. I'd heard special effects, like how they're going to do that. I'd heard something about CGI, and the only point which I reckon, which was thought, was it CGI, was Seth Rollins where he's gonna puke when he did that at the end. I guess that's the only thing, because I don't particularly want to watch it back. I predicted Ping Pong Ball Eye. I predicted Ping Pong Ball Eye in a string. But you predict Ping Pong Ball Eye, you get what you deserve. I keep forgetting about my superpowers. So I've got to stop predicting things, because they keep happening. Somebody did the I think it's half white, half red lollipop things you can get. So yeah. It was I had a very low bar as it was. My low bar was Ping Pong Ball Eye on a string. What I got was a fake eye which looked like it could have been a ping pong ball, just held onto a face. I think that's worse. I don't know. At least mine contained some kinetic excitement. Whilst this one was just, Oh, it's bad. If you've seen the photo, it's pretty bad. Not into... Obviously, I don't mean bad as in, it was so gory and horrific. Like, it was like just rubbish. Yeah. It's one of those where you question, like, in terms of like target audience stuff, a kid might have been fooled by that and might generally be in bed right now freaked out. Maybe a kid. But anyone older than that? I don't even know if it could be that old a kid. Just because it was so laughably fake. Yeah. But I was promised CGI. Not promised CGI. I was rumored CGI and I didn't get it. But yeah. My low bar was beaten. I think that's my assumption of this. That's my review of this match. I had a low bar and that low bar was beaten. So yeah. So yeah, but I will just say about the wrestling itself, it was some great wrestling around a pretty stupid stipulation. Like, I'm assuming I wasn't meant to laugh at the ending, but I did. With a match where the stipulation is the only way to win is to extract your opponent's eyeball. Like, ugh. Like, again on the preview on Thursday, we were saying that no matter how great the match efforts beforehand, like, because of the match stipulation, we're essentially just tuning in for the one thing. We're tuning in to see, how are you going to gouge an eye out? How are you planning to get out of this really weird corner you've written yourselves into, where there was absolutely no need to do it? multiple occasions to just veer a little bit out so you didn't have to go so weird or do something so strange. Well, I don't know. All good matches start with villainous pliers. Like, oh my god, he's got pliers. Sneak attacks and commentator's serious voice, all in one package. Like, really, this wasn't the easiest match for me to take seriously. Like, as soon as they're doing the commentator's serious voice for pliers and then Rey Mysterio sneak attack, just like, I'm not going to let this villain get on top of me. Oh, I'm wiping my eyes because I need to. Like, it was like with both the lads grabbing weapons as their opponents, as they did that with it, and their opponents repeatedly tapped the square button to fight them off as they're doing that to get them off it. Like, they had a match as well. They had they're doing like frog splashes, falcon arrows, a nice falcon arrow onto the ring apron. The store was awesome as well, which I don't normally point out tiny things like that, but it's just the fact when Rollins was about to, he held him up high, and the ref and the commentary was good at that moment. It's like, oh god, no, what's he going to do? And then slams him down. That bit that worked. They tried to do a genuine match, like spinning DDTs, and all sorts of stuff. Like, but when all this has happened, I'm thinking, but they can only win by gouging their opponent's eyeball. So you're having this nice wrestling match, but you're going to then return to the violent bit, and it's weird. I really enjoyed the wrestling bits. And sometimes the eye bits had tension, and sometimes it was just a bit weird. Like, especially when it was, let's do wrestling, let's do eye bit, let's do wrestling. Like, that kind of flow, when it went back between those, was a bit odd. When it stuck with one and stuck with it, that's when it was a little bit better. Like, I guess I've given it some compliments. There were some cool spots, like especially in the wrestling match middle section. Like, Mysterio with two, I guess, suicidas into sunset power bombs that sent Rollins into the barricade. And it did that both times. That was great. Especially, it was great once, but then to do it again, it's like, oh yeah, just nailed it both times. And the story was like Mysterio was just as relentlessly going after Rollins' eye as the villain was going after his. Like after those sunsets, he grabs snapped in half kendo stick and tried to grind it into the eye of Rollins. And then Rollins was trying to repeat the steel step spot because he's the villain, with Rey fighting him off. And the first time I was like, what are you doing here? was we got the ultra close spot where Rey was pushing Rollins' face right up against the steps, and the one where Seth Rollins then low blowed him, because it's kind of like he went up against the corner of the steps and they stayed on it, which is very rare for WWE, because I often comment about how they quick cut way too much, and I definitely felt it in the Bayley-Nikki Cross match, where there's so many cuts, and the cuts don't add anything apart from an increased pace. And more often than not, the action in the ring doesn't have that pace. So it doesn't warrant it. Like, if you're doing a quick cut to increase the pace, it's got to at least match the action that's happening. So you heighten it rather than disorientate me from it. As in, you can't be telling your own story with the camera work. But they stayed with it on the eye thing, and that worked. Just in terms of building up the tension, you stay with it. It's like, oh god, are you going to do this? What are you going to do here? Is this whether in my head I was like, well, it's been rumored CGI. What do they do? if they stay on it, what are they going to do? As the cut already happened, and there's already a thing there, and that's what we get. My expectations were way too high. I think it's fair to say. If in my head I'm thinking, oh, have you already put the prop there, and we might get like still in the like a lens kind of thing, or like a face covering where they've put makeup on or something, and I'm expecting way too high end. In my head, picturing Hollywood level covering over the face where you couldn't really tell, but it's like a weird grossy thing. And you don't have to show much of it. But my expectations were way too high. And what we got was, again, he holds a ball onto his face. That wasn't the spot. I'm just saying, because it wasn't Rollins, but that's when I started to think, oh wait, how are they actually going to do this? I was intrigued when they were staying on it. It's like, no. No. Bring down your expectations. No, not at all. The villain then got on top after kicking Rey Mysterio in the balls, and he was then down. I can't remember what happened with the curb stoppy thing. And then he drags Rey to the steps as Rey shouts, no, please don't, no, like trying to sell the genuine fear. Rollins tries to push him closer to the steps. I'll be honest, the tension that was building as they fought each other off wasn't half bad. Like, as I said, once they picked a tone and stuck with it, be that cool wrestling stuff, be that trying to build up tension as they're teasing during the final bit, that wasn't that bad. But there's a million less silly stipulations you can achieve that with. You can get that same feeling, that same teasing the thing happening feeling, without it being this. Okay. Anyway, so the villain succeeds with the pushing in his eye type of thing, but he doesn't seem to know whether he succeeded or not. I kind of see him hesitating of, is he going to follow up with a curb stomp to like properly end it, and he kind of stutters a bit backwards, then he closes in, and then he sees what he's done, and he's shook at just the violence of the thing that he's managed to do. The ref jumps on top of Rey, who's asking for help. Rollins, just completely shook, goes to the side and pukes. He's gonna puke. Then we get the shot, and Mysterio is clutching an hilariously fake eye onto his face. But it's played off super seriously, like it's the grossest thing ever. And I'm just sitting there like, why do I watch wrestling again? Like, you predict the ping pong ball eye, you get the ping pong ball eye. Yeah, these podcast superpowers are dangerous. Be careful with your predictions. So, again, I had a low bar, but it wasn't passed. So, we'll say the sequence of events, it was both odd and not. I want to say not awful. Like, they're trying to build up the horror of the thing they've done. The issue is, it's such a cheap and bad prop that all the build falls flat as soon as the thing happens. Like, personally, maybe just if you're going to do that, don't do the eye. If you're going to do it this way, just the blood pack, and he's holding it on his face. Maybe that's all you needed, just for this type of thing. But to actually try and show the eye, it looked awful. It just looked so bad. And you know what? I think I prefer. Yes, definitely. Chase had an idea on Thursday too. Rey Mysterio's got a glass eye. He did something with that, and I think I prefer that. He said something. That's close to my ping pong ball eye. I can do a spot where it just flies. Obviously, it makes no sense because you'd have to actually have it, or at least you can do a camera angle. I don't know. I thought this was awful. They backed themselves into a corner. You know, let's just do this interesting stipulation, and it's different. It generated intrigue. Like I'm seeing on Twitter, a lot of people tuned into this show just to see how they get out of this and how they do it. And the answer was quite like, oh, okay. Like, as I said, with a show like this, with all the build and the bizarreness to it, when it aired, it just kind of fell flat and was just responded with, okay, all right, and cool. It was, yeah, it was a very strange one. Yeah, this one. And that was kind of the tone for this show. Like, it was fine. It was weird. Cool. I call it there were two halves of this show. One half where the pay-per-view was building nicely like your regular pay-per-view, and then the second half where it just got weird, and the endings for everything kind of either fell flat or was just strange or laughable, or like, what are you doing? It was really strange. But again, Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio can wrestle together. Later on, we did get a Charlie Caruso outside Rey Mysterio's. Rey Mysterio gets checked on by the doctor, and they were saying, he's been taken to hospital, but as long as the nerve's perfectly fine, they'll be able to put the eye, just plop it back in, and it'll be perfectly fine. Yeah, like Vader. But yeah. So yeah. They're trying to sell it off as super serious when it looked so hilarious. It looks so bad, and they're selling it off as so serious. Like, I'm not. Why do I watch you? When this is one of the biggest things, and I know on Raw they're gonna have to try and sell the seriousness of it again, and obviously they're selling it as this super disgusting thing. Where again, I don't think I saw one person on Twitter which this in a positive light or still taking it as a serious light. It was very bizarre. But story that it's one of those where the story they're telling is meant to be this ultra violent thing that's happened. Well, I did ask, how do you do this in a PG setting? I guess the answer is, one, you don't, but two, if you're going to, at least make the pop hilariously bad, so like the only people that would buy it would be particularly young. Well, I guess I would say I wouldn't show this to a particularly young child. But again, it's so bad. Anyway, let's move back up the card. And I'll end on a happy note, because as I said, what ended up actually as the match that I enjoyed the most from start to finish with no issue was the opening match of the show. So I'm going to accidentally end on a chirpy note. But I've already been going like quite a while, so let's try and wrap this up. MVP with Bobby Lashley versus no one. Super quick one this. Apollo Crews not cleared for action. MVP declares himself as the new United States Champion. Done. There we go. Out we pop. No pun intended. I talked about the eye for an eye match. With this one, I guess Apollo Crews might come back and get... with the rumour of Apollo Crews might come back and get a United States Championship double thing, and it's a ladder match. And that's where the new championship is officially crowned. Like, so MVP declared himself the new champion, but it's not official. I guess a bit like Bayley later. But that's... yeah, and then you get the proper fight for it later. There's not much more to add. It's as I said, this pay-per-view ended up really feeling like a set-up pay-per-view. So with a lot of stuff, it's like there's not really much to talk about, because this was a short setup show, like a B pay-per-view compared to what's due to come at SummerSlam. It was setting us up for the big show. Then we got two matches that I generally enjoyed. We got the Smackers Women's Championship first. Bayley, the champion, joined by Sasha Banks, her co-women's tag team champion, versus Nikki Cross, who was joined by Alexa Bliss. So you got the dynamic of the two heels with all the gold. You got the person fighting with heart, and you got the friend at ringside who's there to help with the odds. But I loved this being placed here on the card, because after the main event, it was immediately a match where it's one where I kind of like McIntyre Ziggler, where you're confident in the winner, but you're interested enough in the person who's champion. So there's at least intrigue there, even if you don't super buy the challenger. Which for Ziggler McIntyre, for me, it's like card placement, where because of those dynamics, for me, Ziggler McIntyre is pretty early in the card. Bayley Nikki Cross was the same and was early in the card, so I had no issue for it. Like, here was perfect for it, and it was a nice precursor for Asuka Banks later in the show with the Sasha Banks trying to interfere. Like, I do just want to note, I said it earlier, but I hated the production for this match. Like, it was immediately at the start where I really felt like I was getting jolted about. Like, with the additional folks at ringside, I found the cuts so jarring. Like, an insane, or like almost inane amount of cuts. Just cutting back and forth with said cuts, adding nothing but that rapid pace. And it was a rapid pace the action wasn't telling. So the technique and what I'm seeing are not in sync. And I'm just kind of like taken out of it. It's just like a kind of a slow testing each other out kind of start to a match, or they're putting expressions at each other, and it's doing the quick cuts. Like, no. the pace of the match is not the pace of your cuts. They are against each other at this point. It's just a little production thing. There's absolutely no need to be cutting at that point. You're not adding anything with these cuts. Because they're doing main shot close up, ringside, main shot close up, main shot ringside. It's like, my God. You can do, I guess, I'm trying to think. You don't need to do, when you do main shot close up, you don't need to go main shot close up within like 3 seconds of each other again afterwards. Just, you can stick on one for a bit longer, then cut to the other, stick on that one for a bit longer, then back to the main. Then when you go back to the main, don't do another close up, then you can go to ringside. So many unnecessary cuts. I'm just saying, you don't need to do that amount. Just slow it down, because that's the point. The match isn't going that quickly. So why would your cuts be that quick and that frantic? It just took me out of it. Anyway, so the nerdy rant over. If you're not watching before, I did film production at university. These rants happen sometimes. There's no need for their production to be as frantic as it is. Sometimes it takes me out of it. A lot of people don't notice, but for me, when you notice, it's really irritating. It's really difficult to keep up sometimes. Anyway, in terms of the action itself, a cross awoke Bayley after hitting the swinging net breaker and nearly scoring the pin. A very a quick start to this one. Perhaps a minor victory for the Scot with her head being slammed into the plexiglass moments later, but you got the hero nearly catching the heel champion by surprise, and then you got the retaliation from the bad guy, completely swinging momentum. With the champion on top, the cheeky games from Nikki Cross crept in. The one I mainly remember, the challenger being in the ring decor, or the ringside apron. Bayley turns her back, and next thing we know, Nikki's popped up, hit in the ring decor on the other side of the ring. And then Bayley runs across, baseball slides in, and they end up in a brawl back in the ring. If you like, Bayley hits the belly to belly, so Nikki Cross nearly pays for her cheeky antics, which was kind of like a flow of the match. Like, after each Nikki Cross cheeky trick, Bayley was soon back up trying to stop her. Most of the time successful, but as the match went on, Nikki Cross was more and more successful, able to hit more and more offense in a string in a row. Eventually she did exactly that, hitting a string of offense on the champion, but not able to put her away, upping the ante with a swinging neck breaker off the apron. But Bayley was still up in the ring when Nikki Cross rolled her in. She was getting up for those lariats. It's like, yes, Bayley was worn down and needed Sasha Banks to kind of pull her out of the ring after the said lariats were hit, but she was still up to take the lariats in the first place. With Banks smelling danger, she jumped up onto the apron screaming at the referee, who immediately started shouting at her. Alexa then comes to help even the odds, that's why she's there. But unknown, she'd already passed the boss knucks to Bayley, who swung a straight punch right into Cross's ribs. And then it's like the rose plant, the face plant thing, slamming Cross down onto her head, and Bayley gets the win. Again, for me, second place on the card. Yeah, perfect match for this slot. Perfectly enjoyable, and set up the Bayley and Sasha Banks antics, which would come into play in the Asuka Sasha Banks. Even if I wasn't a fan of how that's where it ended, it was at least, that moment was at least set up. After saying, like, me personally, they're not successful, then the match continues. It's how I would have done it. Well, of course, that's not the story they want to tell, and my story gives you a definitive winner, which WWE don't really like to do. I guess the other fix is you don't do the title match at this show. You keep it you do the women's tag team title match. You do that here. But again, I was super interested in Sasha Banks Asuka as soon as it was announced. So in terms of generating interest for the pay-per-view, it worked. But I don't know, would I have been just as excited if it was a women's tag team championship match instead for the with Kairi Sane Asuka? I don't know. I want to say yes because I enjoyed the match so much on Raw. Maybe that's a good maybe thing for it. Where on Monday Night Raw, you've got a definitive winner, and in Asuka Banks, you just didn't. But at this point of the show, because I'm going backwards, but at this point, I was perfectly happy, and I was like, yeah, keep all the gold. What are they calling them? The golden role models, I think. Just to trying to remember, and I really like them. It's just that I leave the pay-per-view with a bit of a sour taste, or a bit of a flat taste compared to at this point where I was in and I felt like they've properly set up. Like when I wrote the notes for this, it's like, yeah, they've set this up for later when there's going to be interference in the Banks Asuka match, and that's exactly what happened. Anyway, positives coming out of Bayley Nikki Cross. Great show for Nikki Cross as well. Potentially her best main roster match. I want to say yes because of course quite often you need time, and on WWE TV don't always get a lot of time to show something like this. Anyway, the opening match of the night, which ended up being my match of the night, so we end on a super positive, just because of like from start to finish. Like if the ending of Asuka Banks is different, that's my match of the night, because everything apart from the ending was. But this was the only match where, I guess Bayley Nikki Cross, but Bayley Nikki Cross for me was at a much lower level. But from start to finish, this was just enjoyable, and it was a good pay-per-view opening match. It was a tables match for the... Why am I doing that? Just brushing the sea of night. Anyway, the SmackDown Tag Team Championships were on the line in a tables match. New Day versus Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. A fun opener to kick off the show. Fast, back and forth, and full of tables. People like tables. Kofi in particular was bringing some cool spots, not always to his benefit, mind you. An awesome running dropkick that sent Shinsuke into the plexiglass. There was the Cesaro strong spot with him walking across the ring apron, holding Kofi above his head. And finally, where Big E launched the man over the top rope, only for him to get slammed with an upright table by the baddies. He was throwing himself all over the place. like the trust fall. The trust fall always gets me too, where he just jumps and then turns backwards to land on his opponent on the outside. That one always gets me. It's one of those where it both looks awesome. It's like, you madman, I could never do that. So, but yeah, Kofi for me, when I say he was the man of this match, it was purely because he was like seemingly totally willing to be launched about everywhere to take everything. He was the crazy one in this one. The champions in the New Day set up a double table tower on the outside, but the curse. You set it up, you go through it. Shortly, after I guess another string of offense, shortly when they were on top, Kofi then ends up on the turnbuckle ropes. He stops. Cesaro tries to powerbomb him through, but Kofi halts him, leading to Nakamura to lend a hand for the two-man powerbomb through the tables, and we get new Smackers Tag Champs. Cesaro and Nakamura win. The story of the new champions potentially having New Day's number continues. Yeah, Cesaro's had that story already with Sheamus and the Bar, but yeah, just have such good chemistry, it seems like, especially those three, that you put in another really good wrestler. Previously it was Sheamus, now it's Nakamura. You put someone else in there, and you just got four people who are flipping fantastic. Guess like I was talking about with Banks Bailey versus the Kabuki Warriors. That there are four people who are all amazing, and just let me watch them, just let them do their thing, and I'll totally enjoy it. And that's what this match was. Again, it was fun opener, which really shouldn't be match of the night, but because of, I guess, the WWE booking, I'll call it, where the endings come into play, and for me, just completely detracted the matches. Like, for me, the two I enjoyed from start to finish with no issue were the two opening matches. And for me, then, I give it to the tables match, because, of course, it has a little bit more energy purely because it was a tag team pay-per-view opener. And tornado tag matches, because, of course, tables match, they weren't standing on the aprons. In the tornado tag matches, they get quite a bit of, I guess, it's quite chaotic. You get freedom to go anywhere, do anything, do whatever. Yeah, generally enjoyed that opener. It's good to end on a positive on a show which ultimately felt like a B pay-per-view. And I said I'd give my grade, and the sentence grade for it is that it felt flat, and it kind of fell flat. And when it went off air, I didn't know what I was going to say, because I didn't really have much to say about it, especially the last match with the Swamp match. But I guess my grade would be a C. It starts off relatively well. It's got some good moments in there, but whatever great wrestling there was, for me, kind of just got pulled back as the pay-per-view started to feel more and more like a setup pay-per-view for the next thing. So this show itself feels less and less needed to be watched. So yeah, really kind of pulling people in with bizarre stipulations and potential for strange things. And we had to ask Sasha Banks of this could be like your wrestling match of the night, the Awesomeness, which it was to a point. Then you had the, I guess, eye for an eye match. Then you had the Swamp match, which are all both kind of ended on a flat note. And so did the final three matches all ended pretty flat. And then the overall feeling is, yeah, pay-per-view feels flat. It was essentially a setup pay-per-view. And there for me, give it a C. Because again, there was some good stuff in there. It's just a lot of flat endings and crap, and a lot of stuff I'm just not going to remember. As I like Dolph Ziggler Drew McIntyre was fine. I'm just not going to remember it. Like, if you ask me to give you the WWE Championship matches on a pay-per-view and you go back, you have to, and you make me go back through them pay-per-view by pay-per-view in reverse order, I bet you when I get to this show, in like a year's time, when I get to this show, I'd have to really think, if not have any idea at all what the match was. Because it's one of those where it's fine, I just won't remember it. But there was some good on there. As I said, love the tag team match. Really do like Banks and Bailey's dynamic. It worked really well in the first match, but then in the later match, it felt like it was the complete wrong point to end it. And yeah, the Rollins versus Mysterio, whatever momentum it had by them doing cool wrestling things in the middle, the ending kind of ripped away. Then stupid situation with good wrestling. And then the main event, I just didn't get anything from. Again, that's from somebody who generally enjoyed the Funhouse. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it was never meant to have super symbolism or whatever. But it didn't feel like there's much to it. So pay-per-view ends flat. I give it a C. Give it a it's fine. It just fell flat. And now it's 4 o'clock. I bloody go to bed. I was like, the bloody moth on my leg. Get off. So I felt like a really British way to get a moth off me. Anyway, that is me done for tonight. You can follow me on Twitter at the Damn Implicat. You can follow Laws of Pain / Wrestling Headlines on Twitter at Laws of Pain. Go to Wrestling Headlines for all of your latest wrestling news. As I said already, Tito's got a column that immediately went up, and I've gone immediately live here as well. So you've got both ends. If you prefer reading, you've got him. If you prefer listening to an Englishman chat to a wall, you're weird, but you've also got me. I'll be back because I also review Raw the next day every week, so it'll be midnight on a Tuesday. Same with NXT the next night. I'll be live, as far as I know, I'll be live midnight on Thursday. And the times could always shift. And it's going to be a nice normal week because I've had Dominion, 2 of those shows, a prediction show, and now this. So I'm shattered. I'm done for a bit. I'm happy just to do Raw, NXT with very little effort. Just go in and enjoy it and then come out again. It'll be quite nice. Also, to say goodbye to this colour scheme. Luminous purple, luminous green and bright red. You're not giving me much to work with here, WWE. That colour scheme is... That's another thing where, for such an outlandish colour scheme to deliver such an average pay-per-view... if you're going with a colour scheme like that, you bloody go balls to the walls. Which I guess they kind of did in some sense. It was just not the right kind. Anyway, thank you for listening to this. I'll be back. I think I'm trying to remember in terms of time-wise what will be the first show on Laws of Pain Radio. But on Laws of Pain Radio, we've also got stuff as well on the podcast version. There's a link to the LOP Radio podcast on RedCircle. You can also donate there on RedCircle to LOP Radio to help us keep going. Pretty certain if you just go to the podcast, on any one of the shows, there'll be a button that says donate to this podcast. And of course, that helps us continue to do whatever we want to. Same with liking, subscribing, belling. Is there a verb for it? Whatever here on YouTube. Just watching the videos with ad blocker off. I don't know. I'm so new to this YouTube stuff. I will be here on Tuesday for the Raw review. Thank you for watching. What did you think? Hit me up on Twitter at the Damn Implicat. With that, I say thank you for listening to this. Again, hit me up with what you thought about the horror show and Extreme Rules. Did you enjoy it way more? Did you hate it way more? What did you think of the main event? What did you think of the eye? With that, so thank you for watching, and I bid you adieu. Adios.